Welcome home to the Loving Consciously podcast. My name is Amanda.
And my name is Eric.
And if you are like us, nobody taught you how to love.
We are best friends and life partners here to vulnerably and authentically share our 7-year journey to unconditional love.
Our mission is to help you learn how to love consciously in all of your relationships so we can journey together towards a more effective, intentional, and fulfilling way of giving and receiving love. Loving consciously.
Together, we have overcome neurodivergence, mental health, addiction, pregnancy loss, infidelity, and grief. After 6 years, the lack of knowledge on how to heal or love each other through these challenges led to our separation.
After us both spiritually awakening and recommitting, we built our new conscious partnership founded on unconditional love and a commitment to personal growth.
Thank you for joining us as we put it all out there to show you the duality of our love's pain and beauty.
And remind you that you have both the capacity to love consciously and the power to always choose love. Welcome back to the Loving Consciously podcast. It has been 3 weeks since our last episode. There has been so much going on in our lives between selling the house and the moving into the trailer and most recently having our conscious commitment ceremony. And today we are going to talk about something that really resonates with our life, and that subject is loving through change. And before we get into that meat and potatoes of that, we wanted to tell you a little bit about our ceremony.
Yeah, we got to celebrate our 7 years together by coming together as the people that we are now after the growth and the change that we've undergone over this time period, and really reflected on ourselves and our authentic connection and chose to be with one another. We, as conscious humans, after everything that we've been through, looked at each other in the face and said, I still choose you through all the change. And that really kind of puts us back into the topic of today's episode is we're not the same people that we were when we got together, and that's the point.
Yeah, I really want to, really quick before we get into it, read our commitments because, I mean, of course, we're biased and I think they're amazing, but really what this ceremony was, in essence, was way back when we got married and did the vows, you know, the for richer or poorer and in sickness and in health, and those are great. It just now, through all of the challenges and grief and loss and mental health and infidelity, and you can listen to our intro, all of those things that we've overcome together, we're now our conscious, more healed spiritual selves. And so making these commitments that we wrote and that we shared that honor our conscious partnership just felt like a necessary and beautiful, amazing step to take. So those are: I commit to consistently working on myself, making embodying my highest self my number one priority. I commit to supporting you and holding you accountable as you do the same. I commit to radical honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability. I commit to the values of love, faith, and grace. I commit to always holding friendship as our foundation. I commit to co-creating the life of our highest timeline together. And finally, I commit to always choosing unconditional love in this divine union, to loving myself and to loving you as I love God. It was a really beautiful day. I got to re-wear my original wedding dress. We unveiled our commitment tattoos. We both got matching tattoos on our ring finger, and all of our loved ones showed up to support. So really grateful for that day, and yeah, just moving forward with this new commitment.
Yeah, it's exciting to do that. And part of our journey this last year has been this constant focus on growth and change. It's a fundamental aspect of our conscious relationship, working on ourselves, working on our growth, and also holding our partner accountable to their own growth. The reality of the world is that the only constant is change. If we are not changing, if we are not growing, then we are stagnant in where we are. And that leads to blocked energy. It leads to trapped emotions. We came down to this earth to experience life in all of its beauty and splendor, and also in all of the tough lessons that it has to teach us. And if we're not constantly open to that change and to that growth, then we're denying that part in ourselves.
Yeah, and I would double down on that and say, if you are resisting change or resisting growth, as we both deeply were through our escapism and consumerism and all of those lovely isms, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, will bring forth opportunities for growth. And generally, in the human condition and in the reality of the world, that looks like suffering. I was just really, really hell-bent on not facing my emotions, and it will bring you situations to kind of bring you to your knees. Like, that is, to me, fundamentally the definition of the word grace. You know, I talk about it in my intro of my podcast, like, suffering was a gift from grace that called me home to my natural state of love. We can avoid growth and change all we want, but at the end of the day, it's going to happen one way or another. We invite you on that journey with us of growth and change, and I have a suspicion that if you're here listening, you are just as interested in that as we are. And even if you're not, and that's not your primary focus, that's okay. The purpose of this podcast and these episodes is just to give you little tidbit pieces on how to love more consciously and have more conscious partnerships in all of your relationships. Something else that I was thinking about preparing for this episode is, you know, change is growth. It's expansion. It's a good thing. Just like Eric was saying, like, you don't ever want to, you know, be stagnant. Like, that's contraction. And when you're contracting inward and you're shutting down, you are not experiencing the full extent of range of emotions. If you don't allow yourself to experience the full growth and change and pain, then we don't also get to experience the full joy and love and those things. You know, big emotions, like big pain equals big love. You can't have big love without big pain.
Yeah, and also just to kind of riff on that a little bit, something you mentioned earlier of how the universe kind of brings about change regardless. And the duality of that is there's always opportunity around us. And it's common for us to not see those opportunities for growth because we're comfortable with where we're at, because we are consistently living in the same container, doing the same patterns, around the same people, stuck in the same rut. And so in order to encourage us to find change, that's where suffering comes in. When we are living in a comfortable manner and we're not encouraging our own growth, or being in loving relationships with others that encourage our growth, then Source kind of has to step in and create that suffering for us to really kind of take a step back and wake up and say, oh, wow, yeah, I've been the same person for 7 years. I'm still dealing with the same negative emotions or limiting beliefs, and I'm not growing into the person that I'm meant to be. That really is up to us. It's up to our perception and our choice whether we're going to do it of our own volition or if we're going to endure the suffering to get there.
Yeah. Bringing it back to this topic, right? Loving through change. Really, in essence, allowing your loved one the grace and the space to change and loving them through it. That is obviously a really catchy and clickbaity sentence, and it sounds so simple and is also really difficult, right? But that is the core essence of what we're teaching in this episode today. When you can allow your loved one grace and space to grow and change and love them through it, that is loving consciously. That is how we all grow and move into the new world, whatever that looks like. When we know better, we do better. And holding someone to who they used to be or holding them to the mistakes of their past, that's not helping either one of you, really. That's keeping you in suffering. That's keeping them in this old version of themselves. Something really beautiful that I heard from someone dear to my heart was anyone who is, struggling or has hurt you or is going through a period of change, hold them in your mind as their highest self, because you are also co-creating their reality, right? We're all co-creating this reality of life. And when you hold someone in your mind as an older version of themselves and not giving them that grace and that love to come into a better version of themselves, you are creating that reality as well. And, you're making it harder for them to be the version that you want, because that's really what we want, right, y'all? We want more love. And to get more love, we've got to give more love, and we've got to make room for love by letting go of the past.
Yeah, and that can really manifest in two ways, right? When we potentially have friction with somebody in the past and how they've treated us or how our experiences together have co-created negative energy, holding on to that and not allowing them the space to grow and to heal right? That energy, not only for themselves, but also for you, is keeping that energy trapped by releasing the past, by saying, I forgive you. Forgiveness is one of the biggest ways we can allow others to grow, by showing them that grace and that love and saying, my emotions and my regulation is my responsibility. It's nobody else's. Allowing that person the ability to change and grow, and meeting them with love as they do that, encouraging their highest self, is one of the most loving things that we can do.
Definitely. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, you hear so much about forgiveness, and it really is a gift for yourself more than anyone else. But I just want to say, like, if you haven't listened to our intro series, I'd really invite you to do it, because we go really in depth through the utter destruction and misery and suffering that we caused for ourselves and for each other. We've been there, and that is the essence of this message and this podcast, is if we can do it, you can do it. Everything can be healed, and it's going to happen through change, and we have to be able to love through that change. Some kind of helpful tips, if you will, is, don't limit or dismiss or argue your loved one and the growth and the change that they're going through. Something that I personally have really deeply experienced and has been difficult for me is I am changing, I am growing, I am becoming a much more loving and conscious and healed version of myself, and I have people in my life who are constantly holding me to my old self and are constantly, a year ago, sometimes even my addiction, which was 9 years ago, a month ago you said this, or a year ago you did that, or you used to believe this, or 2 months ago you told me you wouldn't do this. And it's really understanding, like, number one, that's a long time ago, even a day ago. Every second you are a different version of yourself. Every second you have aged a second, you are a second closer to death, you are a second more mature and more grown. And so holding someone to something they said even yesterday, let alone months or years ago, it's just not practical. It's not effective. And what I get in my situations is, well, you're not being authentic, or you're being dishonest, right? Like, you're a liar. You said 2 months ago you wouldn't do this thing. And it's like, well, 2 months ago you weren't doing this thing, and now I've grown and I've changed and our dynamic has changed, and now in this moment and this reality, that no longer honors me or you or boundaries or the value of love. That's my number one piece of advice, is like, really try to remember and understand and understand that we are different every second. And even as recent as a minute ago, I can say, you know what? No, I'm not hungry. Well, a minute has passed, something has shifted. I've, gone out and gotten the mail, moved my body a little bit, and I've realized, oh, I am hungry. If Eric were to be like, well, you just said you weren't hungry. Well, a minute ago I wasn't. I'm hungry now. And that's a really simple analogy, but I share that to show that that's how quickly reality can change. That's how quickly someone can change. Leave that space for them. Don't view it as, you're lying or you're inauthentic or you're constantly changing. Like, that's the point.
We enter a relationship typically from this place of, I'm understanding who you are. I accept this person. I want to get to know this person. And then throughout the time of that relationship, right, we hold that original image or projected thoughts that we have of the relationship and that person in our mind. And we say, this is the person that I married, or this is the person that I started dating. And so when we are facing those unhealed parts of ourselves, the things that make us feel uncomfortable, and we watch our partner change and grow or have differences from when we got together, it's easy to start thinking, oh my gosh, we're growing apart. Really, what we need to do is sit down and take a look at ourselves and say, what am I holding on to? Why am I holding on to that part of them and not allowing that space for them to grow and change? Am I loving their core essence? Am I loving their soul? Or am I loving this projection of who I think I love?
Something that's coming up for me, like what you just said about loving the essence. You hear so much, we grew apart, or, they changed, or they're not the person I married, or they're not the friend that I befriended years ago, or whatever it may be, right? Like I've had multiple people in my life tell me, like, it's almost like I'm grieving you, like you've completely changed. And I think we forget so often that a human, a body, like that is not our core essence. Our soul, our essence, whatever you want to call it, is inherently what we are, and that lives on. That energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? It just changes form. And so that energy, that essence, I think connecting with and loving that and honoring that is what's carried us through all of our tough times. Because even in the, infidelity, or even in, my really poor mental health, or whatever you and I were going through, I always knew the essence of who you were, and I always knew your soul, and was able to see past that and hold that. And we just have such horrifically high divorce rates, and so many families that aren't speaking to each other. And the statistics are overwhelming of what percentage of people don't talk to their parents or their siblings or childhood friends anymore. And it's that is the call for grace. That is the call for growth, to release the attachment to the outcome or the image of what you think that person needs to be or should be or used to be. We are all being called forward into a new world, into a new era, right? The systems are crumbling, the world is crumbling. This way of life isn't working anymore. I am seeing, ordinary people and some of the least spiritual people I know come to spirit, God, whatever you believe in, and be hungry for more and not want to be in that suffering. And if that's going to continue to happen, which it is, we are all going to have to start to see past these images and facades and labels and what we think people are, and start seeing and loving them for who they inherently are inside.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Love at its core essence, it's the true, purest form of love, is unconditional. And that unconditional love within ourselves is called forward and tested when we are uncomfortable. And many times change in our partner, change from the norm, or change in general is uncomfortable. And learning to look within and see where that dysregulation is in your life, and rather than projecting it outwards and saying, okay, because this person is changing, I'm now feeling this. Really sit with that, question it, and ask, okay, I'm feeling this. Why am I feeling it? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? What inside of me is unhealed or is asking to be worked on, so that I can be okay with loving this person unconditionally, regardless of the change that's going on in their life.
And I obviously can't speak to anyone's situation. There are a million possibilities of what that could be. But just to kind of maybe get the wheels spinning a little bit, something that, comes up for me is fear, right? Fear of, if this person changes, then ... I'm not going to spit out the multitude of options for that, but fear is very valid, and it's something that's, again, showing us our perception is off. That is the core essence of our emotions. They are a messenger. They are showing us where something is not aligned with truth, which is love. Eric was saying, it's really a call to look inward and say, why am I resisting this change? Why do I not want this person to change? Is it because maybe they're changing and growing and I'm not? And so that's pushing me and calling me forward. I know all of these that I've mentioned have manifested on both sides in our relationship. Just take some time to really sit with yourself, journal, meditate, pray, whatever you do to connect and explore with whichever loved one you are facing change with, what in that situation is, bringing forth these emotions, and how can you work through those? Because as we always say, and we will always say, we are responsible for our own emotions. We are responsible for our own reactions. Nobody causes those. Nobody creates those. And they are a gift for us to grow and change.
Yes, they certainly are a gift. And another perspective that you touched on there is, maybe you're the one that's growing and changing, and the people around you aren't. We tend to hold and limit ourselves to our previous containers, as we mentioned before. And sometimes those containers are based off of the perceptions of others. And this need for love and acceptance that we outsource to other people. The best thing that you can do is love yourself enough to change into the most authentic version of yourself.
Oh, so good. It's really interesting. We came into this episode, y'all are watching this happen live. We came into this episode with the focus of teaching you how to love others as they change. And now we've come full circle back into loving yourself through change, having grace for yourself, loving whatever version of you comes up, loving whatever needs to be released. It's okay to change and it's okay to grow. We have changed and grown more in the last year than, to be honest, I think either of us has in our entire life, and more than I've seen anyone grow and change in such a short amount of time. And, you know, that's been tough on our loved ones, and it's really called them to love and support us through that. And some have done that really well and gracefully, and some have not been able to do it at all and, you know, have had to step away from our lives. And something that is really coming forward for me right now is loving myself has been the core of all of this. Like, it's not just about loving your loved one through change, whoever that may be, whatever relationship that is for you, but it is loving yourself and loving yourself enough to give yourself the grace and the space to release these unhelpful patterns and ways of thinking and things that you have, you know, projected in your mind or in your life. Like, it's okay to let those go, and it's okay to forgive yourself, and it's okay to love yourself. And we can't love anyone else if we don't first love ourselves, as you and I have definitely learned the hard way.
Yeah, and forgive yourself. Everything that we said about loving somebody else through change, forgiveness, acceptance, unconditional love, you are deserving of that too. We should be giving that to ourselves as well, because by giving it to ourselves, by showing that we can show up as our most loving and authentic selves, we're showing others that they can do the same.
Definitely retweet all of that. The only thing I think I didn't really touch on was the unconditional love. Unconditional love is kind of this thing that I think gets thrown around a lot. And I don't know, at least for me, that I ever understood that. I definitely threw that around, like, I love you unconditionally. And this conscious partnership, this conscious relationship, and loving consciously and loving through change, and all of these things that we are talking about and will continue to talk about on this podcast have really deeply taught me what unconditional love is. And, you know, to me, to, I guess, summarize what I feel like I perceive that as is loving the person for their core essence, you know, regardless of their actions, regardless of their mistakes, regardless of, you know, the past or the future or really anything. It's, I, Amanda, love you, Eric, the soul, the essence that is in there. And that love is and will always be and has always been, because I am, you are, we are all one. We are all God, creator, manifest. And so that is like the core essence of love. And unconditional love is, you know, understanding that concept and holding that when it's not always easy. And I'm here to tell y'all, it's not always easy. He doesn't always act in alignment with his highest self. And sometimes it's really easy to forget that unconditional love and to forget that essence. And it all starts within. If we can unconditionally love ourselves in all of our beauty and imperfections, it is much easier and will naturally manifest to unconditionally love everyone else in the world. And that includes both people we agree with and people we don't agree with. You know, something we're seeing a lot right now, there's a lot of darkness and pain and suffering and tragedy happening in the world. And I see people, you know, posting online and on the TV and on all these things, you know, pointing the finger and they're evil and they're wrong. And I wish they would just, you know, cease to exist. And it's really, again, like that's, I mean, just projection, but it's a call to find love, because it's something beautiful we heard in the Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast, which I love. Check it out if you haven't heard of it. Is, you know, talking about Martin Luther King Jr., who said, like, you can't stomp out hate with hate. You can't stomp out anger with anger. And trust me, y'all, I have tried. I spent decades ferociously trying to do that. If I'm just meaner and angrier and hate your hate more, it doesn't work. It's just basic. You could take it down to science, to physics, to all of these things, the laws of the universe. It always has to come from love. Love wins. Love is the answer. And loving yourself, loving others, loving, the dark parts of the world, loving the dark parts of yourself, that's how we love through change.
I'm just speechless over here because that is beautiful. And change is going to happen. We are in a period of great change in this world that we're living in. We're seeing environment change. We're seeing our society change. We ourselves are being called to change. And so answer that call for yourself. Sit down, take some time today or this week to really sit with some of the aspects of your life that you feel no longer serve you, that you feel you can make active choices in your life to change into this and grow into this higher version of yourself.
Thank you so much for your time and energy today, for being with us. We have missed you all, and we've missed being here these last few weeks. Life has been really intense. We are really deeply trying and committed to continuing these on a more regular basis going forward. We actually only have 3 more days in Oregon. We leave early Sunday morning, so the time has come. We are trekking out in our trailer. We are leaving Oregon and this house behind and starting our journey across the country. So that should clear up our schedule a bit more to do these more regularly. But truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here. Thank you for being open to love. Love yourself, love others. Love is how we do it, y'all. It's so cliche, I know, but it really is the answer. It's how we did it, and it's how we all can do it together. So we will see you here next week.